Okay, I'm going to go over how to make the ship for the Asteroid game, your first game graphic. There's a link right here off the assignment. It'll take you to Photopea. That's what we're using for right now until they get Photoshop turned on for us. And when you do go to Photopea, you're going to run into this little window periodically. It's been popping up more than once. I guess they want to keep checking to see, but I always tell them, do not sell my data. I like to maintain my privacy, so I recommend not selling your data. You should be logged in. If you're not logged in, click on the account button and you log out for the moment. I'll log back in. Use your Google login and use your Salinas High School credentials to log in. Um, this will access the free account and all of its features, and we can start to build something. So we're going to make a new project here. So I'm going to click on New Project, and we're going to give it a name. We should always give our projects a name. And so we'll call this Istvan's Ship. This is pretty much for Istvan. And we're going to set its width 100 by 100 pixels. Should be pixels. 100 pixel width, 100 pixel height. Should be a nice perfect square. And we're going to set the background here to transparent with the file named, width and height set, background set to transparent. I'm going to click create. And whoop, there it is. Now, first, some initial navigation stuff for Photopea. Um, this is the actual size. That's 100 pixels by 100 pixels. Really tiny. To try to work in that would be very frustrating. If you hold down your control key and press 0, now it fills the screen. It fills the available space in the screen. Control 1, you'll go back to actual size. You should practice that. Control key and 0 to go full screen. Control key and 1 to go back to actual size. Now, there's another thing called grid lines. The control key and the single quotation sets up the grid lines. Now, at the moment, my grid lines are really spaced out because on a previous project, I set my grid gap to 50 pixels. That's why I have this huge grid gap. Since we're just using a 100 by 100, I'm going to go here to Edit, Preferences, and change my grid gap to like 10. And I'll close that. And that's a much better grid to help guide me while I'm putting the various objects in here to make my square-shaped ship. Remember that grid can be turned off with the control key and the single quote, turned back on with the control key and the single quote. You should practice that so you know how to do it. Now, over here on this side, in this area, is what's called the Layers panel. See right there, Layers? And in the Layers panel, we start off with a locked background. If you try to click on this locked background and do stuff to it, it might pop up a little window that says that layer is locked and you're not allowed to make any changes on it. However, down here in this navigation area, right down here, you'll see that there are a variety of buttons down here on the bottom. And the one that's important to me here is this one, New Layer. I'll click that, and I get a new layer. And I'm going to go ahead and call this Chip Body. Okay. And on this layer, I'm going to now use some of the shape tools that I have available to me. This tool that I've moused over right over here, look off to the side here, you see there's a tool right there that looks like a rectangle. Yours probably looks like a rectangle if this is your first time at Photopea. I'm going to click on that rectangle, hold my mouse down, and switch that from the rectangle tool to the ellipse tool. Unclick my mouse and click again, and now it's the ellipse tool. This top menu changed when I changed to the ellipse tool. I'm going to change the fill to some other color. They will always have some color swatches of basic colors right here, but you can always click on this big rectangle and open up this window called the color picker. And the color picker actually lets you pick colors from a spectrum of colors. And then wherever you put this dot, you can see how the new color is going to look. When I get it to a color that I like, I'm okay with, I'm going to click OK. And now I can see that the fill is set to this new color. I'm going to mouse over my scene here, and I'm going to click and drag out an ellipse. And I want this ellipse to basically span the length and the width, or rather the width of my graphic from side to side, the way that I'm building this ship. And I want to change its size because right now it's not perfectly positioned yet. So I'm going to click on the move tool up here. That's the move tool. See right up here, the move tool, when I mouse over it, and make sure that this checkbox is checked. Notice there's a difference here. When it's checked, there's like a bounding box going around the ellipse. When it's not checked, that box disappears. You want to turn on the transform controls. And I also want to turn that grid back on because I'd like to center this best as I can. And this looks like if I pull that up just a little bit, it'll be centered. If this little chain link is blacked out like that right there, click that so that it's not blacked out, so that it's turned off. That little chain link keeps the aspect ratio. It means if you change the height, the width will change to keep the ratio. But if you uncheck that, you can freely change one size and it's not going to affect the whole thing. Or you could change another size and it's not going to affect the whole thing. And I'm going to pull these out a little bit, widen them a little bit bigger on these. All right, so I'm happy with this first ellipse that I've made. I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer button down here to make another new layer. And this one I'm going to call top thruster. And I'm going to make another ellipse. So I'm going to click on the ellipse tool. My top thruster layer is selected. I'm on the ellipse tool. I'm going to give this thruster a different color, like maybe red. And then I'm going to click right here and drag out an ellipse. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust this ellipse to size. And now I have to deal with an entering student who's just shown up. All right, continuing along here. With that ellipse, now in the scene here, I'm going to kind of adjust its size and its length. I wanted to go all the way up there. All right, I'm happy with that. That's simple, it's basic. All right, so there's my top thruster. Now I'm going to make a bottom thruster, and I want that bottom thruster to basically be, a reflection of the top thruster. Here I'm going to duplicate a layer. I'm going to right click. I'm right clicking. That's that, your middle mouse, or rather your middle fingers over that right mouse button. Right clicking, I can select duplicate layer, and that will make a top thruster copy, which I'm going to change to bottom thruster. Then I'm going to delete all that stuff about copy. All right, so now I've got my bottom thruster. Click on the move tool here, and just using my down arrows, move that thing down the screen. And because I'm using my grid to space these things out, I'm getting a nice look here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add some additional detail to this. This one's going to be my thruster. I'll call this thruster inset. And again, I'll go with top thruster inset. Trying to camel case everything here. So I'm going to click on I'm going to go with one of these little standard colors, like that nice little green right there for me. Then I'm going to draw out a thruster, or draw out an ellipse here, and switch to the move tool. And I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Again, kind of paying attention to my grid lines, letting my grid lines help me I like that. All right, cool. Now, with that one, the way I like it, I will duplicate that layer, and I'll call it my bottom thruster inset. I'm going to go ahead and delete all that stuff about copy. If you name each layer as you build it, you don't got to worry about naming the layers later. Using my down arrow key, just going to move it right down into position. Am I happy? Generally happy. All right. Beginning to take form here. Now let's make another ellipse. I'm going to need another layer, and I'm going to call this layer cabin. I used to use another word, but sometimes teenage boys can't handle that word, so I'm going to use cabin. I'll make this a yellow ellipse and put this right back here in the back and get the transform tool so I can adjust this a little bit. Cool. All right. I like it. Now, I've done some work here. I haven't saved this thing yet. It's always a good idea to save early and save often. So I'm going to click the first time you save, you're going to be saving it as a PSD. That means it's going to be a Photoshop document. Photoshop documents, we don't actually use them in the video game. We're going to have to export a PNG file later, but the Photoshop document maintains all these layers, and that's the important thing. So we're going to save it as a PSD, and in your documents folder, you should have a folder called game design. And in the folder called game design, you should have a folder called game art. You're going to have to make those folders in your documents folder. In your game art folder, you don't necessarily need to have first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth prep, but because I'm making this for like 5 different classes, I need 5 different folders there. You only need just your game art folder. And this one's already named Istvan's ship. I can just click save and bam, it's been saved. Now it's saved. Going forward, all I got to do is click File, Save, and it'll automatically be saved right there for me every single time, just with a File Save, or you can see the hotkey, Control S. Now let me add a few more things to this growing ship here. I'm going to use some rectangles here. I'm going to put a rectangle right here, just like this. And I don't think I necessarily want this one to be yellow. I think I'll make it, pink. Nah. Light blue. Okay, I'm okay with light blue. To get my transform tool, I want to center this basically on that object. I think I'm about centered. Yeah, a little low there, a little high. That's good. And this one's going to be called upper cannon. And one thing about my upper cannon, I don't want it to be on top of everything. I'd like it to be underneath those thrusters. So to get it to go underneath the thrusters, see, I'm not even going to need all this space right there. I could even shift that to that point right there. But I don't want it to be coming out of the top. I want it to appear from the background. So if I drag that layer, click that layer and hold the mouse button down and drag it below the top thruster, now it's underneath the top thruster. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my upper cannon. Oops. And call it my oops. Big oops. Now I lost my layers menu. Oh no. Window. Layers. There we go. I really messed up. Lower cannon. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and use my arrow key to move that down, kind of into position. Now, moving along here, I can also make a little green man. So that's going to bring me back to the top of my stack here, because I'm going to want the little green man to be visible in here. So I'm selecting my cabin layer and clicking New Layer, and I'll put in here Pilot. And like I said, he's going to be a little green man. I'm going to make him with an ellipse, and I will set him to some interesting shade of little green man. There we go. That's a nice little green man shade. And here's his head. And, these little green men, their heads are not perfectly round. They're kind of like, they're aliens, so we should make their heads a little misshapen. And that's his head. Make another layer. I'm going to give him an eye. Eye will be another ellipse. And I'll set this eye. First, we'll use white. There we go. And move tool so I can center this. Also, this is a good time to learn how to really zoom in on something. I want to see what's going on here. If I press and hold down my Alt key and use my middle mouse wheel with my mouse zoomed in over that, it'll actually zoom in really nice on this, so I can like tweak this a little bit. I'm actually adjusting this by pixels. You can see that how the pixels are getting adjusted. And now with that eye like that, I'm going to click the eye, make another new layer, and I'll call this inner eye. The inner eye is going to be another ellipse, but this one's going to be red. And I'm going to click and drag out his inner eye. And then let me see, if I go to Control 1 and turn my grid off, nice, okay. And if I go to Control 0, see how all this is coming together. I might want to go a little smaller with this eye. Eye, stretch that a little bit more. Let me click on his head. Stretch that a little bit more. And then his inner eye, reposition that more towards the center of what I've got going there. I'm going to click File Save to save the file. And Control 0. I'm going to select my background so I can see what this looks like. I go Control 1. There's the actual. Not bad. Not bad. Pretty happy with that. The graphic looks pretty clean. All right. Now, my layers panels become a bit of a mess. It's now bigger than I have the room for. So let's see. I'm going to pick my ship body, my upper cannon, lower cannon, my top thruster, top thruster insert, bottom thruster insert, and cabin. Those are all the components that kind of make up the ship. The cabin, the thrusters, lower cannon, upper cannon, yeah. And then I'm going to click this button down here that makes a new folder. All those things will get put in that new folder, and I'll call this ship. Then I'm going to click on my inner eye, and my pilot, and put them in a new folder and call that folder alien. All my layers are still there. They're just now well organized in folders, and I can now see my whole layers panel right here. Control 0 here. Full size. I'm happy. Now, of course, I'd want you to dress this up a little bit more. Add a few more things of your own to it to make it yours, or even change the way things look. It's up to you. Hopefully your ship comes together, and hopefully this video has been helpful. Make sure you click File Save, and we'll see you later.